Wonderful. Well, Ken is the one with the Ferris wheel behind his head. Everybody meet Ken. I have the ridiculous good luck of getting to introduce Ken, who is a local treasure trove of knowledge about all things writing, including grants and unlocking the secrets to the NIA. So the official introduction is that Ken is a clinician researcher in the UCSF Division of Geriatrics. His work focuses on understanding the determinants and outcomes of disability in older persons. He is a PI of the UCSF Pepper Center, an NIA-funded program which develops clinical research in aging at UCSF. He enjoys mentoring and spends much of his effort helping early career scholars develop their programs in aging research. He's an associate editor of JAMA Internal Medicine and previously served as chair of the clinical aging study section at NIH. But what this doesn't say is that Ken is beloved to all. He really is the best mentor you could possibly imagine. And if you, Melissa is there, I'm sure she has had the opportunity of reading.
It's not the first
KAward
time I've heard that, forgive me.
Yes. Ken has won every mentoring award you can imagine, and in large part because of his knowledge and skill at helping us all navigate through junior faculty-ness and training the secrets to the NIH KAward. So I'm going to hand it over to Ken, and you guys are extraordinarily lucky to get to hear from him.
Hi. Thank you, Bree. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me. It's great to be here and just be part of this. It's just such amazing work all of you are doing. And just it's so nice to see the link between this work and aging. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Okay. So great. Well, thanks. We figured that part out, so the rest should be easy. So great. So what I'm going to talk about is just there's lots of different ways of writing career awards. So I'm going to share sort of a few tips that I've seen, both like through my own career awards, through somebody who's been on the study section, and somebody who's worked with people through career awards, just sort of a few ways to think about this. And I think my emphasis is kind of be more on big picture than little picture, kind of the general thoughts about how you approach this. So just a few words, and Melissa, please correct me if I have anything that's sort of wrong about the way this works. But you. Just like the general thoughts about sort of career awards. So there's actually lots of career awards. I'm focusing primarily on NIH career awards, but the general principles about how you go about this are sort of true whether you're applying to NIH or a foundation. So the general point here is, unlike a lot of the NIH awards where the award really is directed at a project, a career award's really directed at you. It's aimed, you are actually the product of the career award. And the goal is to support your development and training under the direction of a mentor. So the goal is to develop you as an independent investigator. That's a term you hear thrown around a lot, and it's actually, the term is actually broader than it sounds, because there's lots of ways to be a successful researcher, a biomedical researcher. But the general concept is that you're going to be leading your own research machine. You'll be the one eventually writing the grants and coming up with the ideas for research, and you will be leading the research projects rather than sort of just a piece of the research machinery. I mean, but that of course does include collaborative research. So there's a number of KAwards. I'm going to talk primarily about what are often referred to as either K01, K08, or K23. It's actually, the terms actually, those three series tend to, what I'm going to sort of say tends to be applicable to all three. K01 and K08 tends to be K01 tends to be for people who don't have clinical degrees. K08 and K23 tend to be for people who do have clinical degrees, but they're kind of structured the same and reviewed the same. So the dollars you get the funds you're applying for, the primary purpose is actually to support your time. So the general concept is you're in some sort of academic position, and you're basically asking the NIH to pay for your time to develop yourself as a researcher. So typically this means that you're going to have 75% of your effort over 5 years committed to the KAward. So depending on the institute and the mechanism, this generally means about $75,000 to $100,000 in salary to support your basically your upkeep, and then $25,000 to $50,000 for project and training costs. So there's several key application components that all go together, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. So there's a candidate biography where you're going to talk a little bit about yourself. There's a career development and training plan where you're going to talk about how you're going to get the skills you need to succeed as an independent researcher. You're going to write a research plan. So a fundamental part of your KAward is a research study you're going to do over the course of the KAward. And then there's going to be statements from your mentors. So, keep in mind, like when you're writing a career award, I think sometimes the mistakes people make is you can get really, really lost in the micro details because it's so, especially KAwards often tend to be the first grant you're writing. So you sometimes get so obsessed about the details that you forget to explain the really kind of big picture candidate. So the central question that a committee is looking at. So I'm saying this as if it's the NIA reviewing, and of course we're at an NIA conference, but it could be, maybe you'll be writing to another institute. So substitute aging with the mission of whatever institute you're looking at. So maybe it's health disparities, or maybe it's cancer. But will this candidate make a significant contribution to aging research? So again, remembering that you're the product. If you're being reviewed by an NIA study section, the product at the end of this study who's going to really contribute to the science of aging research. And the question is, will the work of this proposal and the outputs of this proposal lead to this outcome? So this really gets considered within the context of the full package. So it's in terms of the candidate, that's you. Is this a strong candidate, somebody with good training, a good track record, but also passion and commitment? Do their mentors and their letter writers say this is a person like you really want in this field? Is there a quality career development plan that's going to give you the skills that are needed to become a leader in aging research and somebody who develops aging research? What's the quality of your research plan, and will your research plan form the foundation for research that you can build on? Will it become a good platform for you? And will it teach you the skills? Does the conduct of that research teach you skills that will further you in your career? Do you have the right mentors who are committed to you and have a track record of helping people become successful? And are you in an environment where you can become successful? So basically, as you write these sections, like keep the big picture in mind and think about how you're answering that. So just a comment about who reviews. So just as a little anecdote, some of you probably have already been on grant reviews, but as your career builds, you will be asked to do this more and more. The very first time I was asked to be on a grant review, it wasn't actually a career development study section. It was for a health services research study section. And I was given a grant on the management of pediatric otitis media, essentially ear infections in children and the use of antibiotics. And I got assigned this grant, and I called up the review officer who ran the study section, and I said, well, wait a second, I'm a geriatrician, not a pediatrician. So I don't understand why I'm getting this grant on like ear infections in kids. And he said, well, you know health systems, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, I guess. And she said, you know about infections, right? I said, like, yeah. And you know about clinical trials? And it's like, well, yeah, I guess I do. So he said, well, you can review this then. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me, and I both was fearful about the grant I was going to review, but I was also fearful about, oh, so this could be similar. I could have a pediatrician reviewing my geriatrics grants. So the general point is the people who review your grants are actually often not experts in your field. It will generally be the case that you know more about your field than your evaluators. What they do know about is they know about the conduct of science. Good reviewers are generally well informed, so they have a good general knowledge of everything, so they have a good general sense of context. But the point here is that the mistake people often make is they get so far in the weeds that they don't explain the overriding significance of questions. And you're often basically presenting grads at this very low level, and you really often should be starting at the very high level of explaining explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it. So kind of keep in mind that, even though this is a career award and it might be your first grant, a good grant actually kind of has to do some teaching. You have to really explain why your work is important and explain the nature of your field. I find as a reviewer, there's some kind of magic that happens when you read a proposal and you read the significance section and you learn something and you say oh, I didn't know that, because then you start to think that the person writing this grant is somebody who really has sophistication. They're going to become an expert in their field. I mean, example of this is, if you're doing correctional health research, don't assume that your grant reviewers even know what the difference between a jail and a prison is. You might have to actually teach and explain at that very basic level. So you might have on a study section, maybe if you're lucky, you'll have 3 reviewers on most grants. Maybe one of them will be an expert in correctional health, if you're lucky. Study section rosters are posted generally for almost all study sections. I've left the link here for the rosters of the career development study sections at the NIA. And you'll be able to tell by the grant mechanism which one yours will apply to. These are the standing study sections. It's sometimes good to sort of look at this and if you're going to go to a specific study section, kind of just get the lay of, just do a PubMed search on them and kind of get a sense of the nature of the people who will be your jury. So a few general principles. This might sound so obvious, but so often missed, is that this is first and foremost, it's a written product. So clarity is crucial. And if your reviewers don't understand what you're doing, or it's too hard to understand, it's going to be very hard for anyone you're not going to get very far. I'm just an aside comment. I see I actually can't see on my screen the chat boxes as people put stuff in there. So just feel free, anyone who wants to sort of just shout out and interrupt me or read, if there's questions that are emerging, just feel free to tell me to stop and read off the questions. So I find reading out loud, I find it so useful. I tend to miss my grammar mistakes, my spelling mistakes, and I tend not to catch them unless I read my material out loud. A few sort of simple things. So remember, in a grant, you're explaining and justifying. And, think about when you're making an argument person to person, you always chunk it out. You explain things in briefer concepts, and then you put it all together. So, just look at your grant. And if you have sentences that are running on for 3 to 4 lines, that's too long. And your reviewer won't be able to think at that level of depth. And if you have paragraphs that just go on and on, that's painful to read. So just do basic things like looking at the length of your sentences and the length of your paragraphs. So important to ask colleagues to read your application, but what is often missed is not just your mentor. Ask colleagues who are not experts in your science. If you have a friend or colleagues who don't do your work, but maybe have some general knowledge, ask them to read it and have them tell you, what do you understand and what do you not understand? Because these people might be very similar to people in your study sections, smart people who know a lot of general stuff, but maybe don't know all the details of your specific area. Again, I have to keep reminding myself of this. It's true actually not just in grant writing, it's true in paper writing, it's true when you give talks, it's true when you teach. You have to always remember what is in your head doesn't matter. What you meant to say does not matter. The only thing that matters is what the reader or listener took away. And it's what they think you said, not what you meant to say. And so often, like you will, like I have this experience all the time when I submit papers, where I say, I get a comment back and they say, you should have discussed X, Y, or Z. And I get very defensive. I say, well, I did discuss this. Didn't you even bother to read? And when I read it back, I can sort of say, well, I understand why they didn't get it. I said it, but it was buried in the middle of some long verbiage. So of course it was missed, or it was explained poorly. The other general principle is consistency. So a career award has sections on candidate, career development, research plan, and mentoring, as we've described. But these are not independent components. They all reinforce that common message about how you're going to develop into a leader in your field. One kind of like advice I sometimes give people is, imagine like a hurricane blows your grant apart and you don't have your name written on it. So the candidate and the career plan and the research plan and the mentoring plan all kind of end up in separate piles. Will somebody reassembling this figure out that these are all part of the same grant? Do they reinforce a common theme enough and a common goal enough that you can piece them together? The other part, though, is like, again, convey enthusiasm and excitement. People who are excited about their work are more likely to be successful. All of you probably are, but it's a little bit of an art to convey that on your paper. The easiest way to convey it is to just say it. Like, don't be afraid of saying things. I am really passionate about this area. I am very committed to this area. Just use words that convey passion and commitment. So a few words on each of the core components. So candidate, how are you going to be assessed as a candidate? And there's varying levels of career awards for people at different times. For the most common NIH KAwards, particularly the K01, K08, and K23, even though they're training awards, they tend not to be your first out of the gate training. They tend to happen after doctoral or usually after some degree of postdoctoral training. So for these awards, you don't need a huge track record, but you need some track record. You should have some degree of training. And generally, there's some expectation that you've shown you can bring work to completion, that you have first author publications. So generally, it's gotten harder over the years. So when I wrote my KAward, I had one first author publication. It's a little bit hypocritical for me to tell you that you need more than that, but it's gotten harder over the years. But you generally need at least two. You need to sort of show that you can bring work to completion more than once. More is ideal. I mean, I think kind of 6 to 8 is the sweet spot, but if everything else in your application is good, you could get by with less. And there's a little bit of luck component. Like if your first papers hit high impact journals, you'll need less. One piece of advice I give starting career investigators is something I call the abstract to publication ratio. It actually is not good to list lots and lots of abstracts on either your CV or biosketch. And the reason for that is I tend to think of abstracts as a promissory note. It's basically work you've started and you're telling us about work underway that you're going to bring to completion. And if you have lots and lots of abstracts and very few publications, it does set off a little bit of a flag that says you're not bringing work to completion. So, I mean, I would sort of say this to the extent that if an abstract should come off your CV once the paper's been published, but it should also come off the CV if you've concluded that the work is not going to go any further. You can have maybe a couple abstracts that show that work is on the way, especially if it's related to work you're trying to do in your career award, but not too many of them. So kind of things that weigh into the subjective assessment of your potential are the creativity and passion that you convey. This is where your mentors and letter writers can really help you. Sometimes it's hard to talk about how wonderful you are, but other people really need to talk about how wonderful you are. Remember that if somebody asks you to write the letter, to draft their letter of recommendation, don't be shy, put in those really superlative words. And then, so the letters in the candidate statement will all weigh into that. So in your candidate statement, tell about yourself, tell your story, outline your training, outline key accomplishments. This can include accomplishments outside of research. So it could be accomplishments that show passion, commitment, ability to bring work to completion, ability to lead teams, expertise in the area, but also you should convey what your initial research accomplishments were. How did you succeed in your training? How did you contribute to your training program? And also, we mentioned you should have 1 or 2 papers. Tell the stories of those, like some of your most important papers and just your success in accomplishing that. And then tell your vision. So part of the career award is, remember, you're the product and they're thinking about where you're going to end up. Help them by telling them where you think you're going to end up. And I know maybe that's a little scary because you might be at a stage of your career where you don't quite know where you're going to end up, or you're not so certain. That's okay. Tell a vision of like what would be a good ending for you. What would be sort of a satisfactory conclusion for the career award. Your career may in fact take a different direction, and it often does because you learn other things along the way. But there should be some plausible statement of, if this career award is funded, it's going to help my career in the following way. So how is this career award actually going to matter? So convince them that the career award will have impact by telling them what that impact is going to be. So the career plan itself, the career development plan, sometimes it gets a little bit too dry. So what you're discussing here is an articulate, clear vision of the skills you need to succeed in your career path. The way I think about this is I think about points on a line, and like the beginning point is where you started, and the end point is the impact you're going to have in your career. So somewhere in the middle of that is you have where you started, and then you have where you are now. And then you have how you're going to become an independent investigator at the end of the career award. So you're basically telling this method and this story of how is the training in this career plan going to get you from like what you know now and the skills you've developed so far to your next stage. Like, so what do you need to get to your next stage? You say you want to be a leader in this area of research. You say you want to have your own grants. What do you need to accomplish that? And how is this career award going to help you develop those skills? And the way you're going to do that is both with the scientific accomplishments and your career development plan. The other part about this is that your career plan is actually, we've mentioned, they're not separate from the research plan. The career plan includes the skills you need to do your research, but the research should basically also be developing skills. So be very explicit about how the research you're going to do is skill developing. And that often is a good answer. If your research is good but not perfect, you'll get some pass on it if it's imperfect, but it's a really good next step. And the process of that research is going to teach you skills you need to know. We can discuss, I'm not going to go into much detail about the minutiae of the plan because there are so many things you can do and it should be individualized. And part of the way you do this is liberally borrow other people's successful career awards and see what they do. It tends to be a combination of coursework, what I call structured tutorials. So maybe you're going to meet with Bree Williams once a month for a structured tutorial where you discuss together how to do cognitive screening in jail and prison populations. It could include seminars you're going to be part of, and it could include meetings. So for example, this very meeting could be part of a career development plan. I'm going to attend the ARCH annual meeting where I'm going to network with people, and I'm going to attend workshops that are going to teach me the following skills. So in terms of the research plan, the kinds of questions reviewers consider is they consider both the general area you want to develop in. So you're going to say you want to become an expert in a broad area. So you want to be convincing about the significance of the overall area and the specific project that's part of that overall area. And then, there's a lot of questions about what is the value of the project as a career development vehicle. Is it a good area for an aspiring investigator? So are you doing what everyone else has already done? Or maybe it's an area that's, there's a fair amount of tread, but are you picking up a unique area of that will be your own? What will you learn from the project? And the central part is they're always looking for, part of the goal of a career development award is that you're going to have an R01 at the end. That means an independent investigator award, your own funded independent project. What is that going to be? Generally, you help them with that by actually telling them what you think that R01 is going to be. There's some balance between ambition and realism. So remember, career awards pay mostly for your time. They pay a small amount for project support. You need to be doing something that can be done within the context of your budget. So things that can be done primarily on your labor and maybe with resources of your mentors. So that it's interesting is that projects on career awards are as likely to be knocked down for being overambitious and being beyond the scope of what can be done and with the resources and funding and time of a career award. So when you're writing your research plan, use your mentor. So this is where you're not expected to know everything about how to write a research plan, but it's actually viewed as the quality of the plan is partially the way your mentorship is going to be judged, because even though they don't expect you to know everything, they expect that your mentor has read this and has addressed at least the key issues. So you should have a clear statement of the study design. This is just, is it a cohort study? Is it a qualitative study with what type of method and theory underlying it? So what is the study design? And then the basic elements, if this is a clinical research study, whether it's a randomized study or whether it's a secondary data analysis, the key elements are always who's in it, who are the subjects, what are the key outcomes, and how are you going to do the analysis? So kind of organize your research plan, think specifically subjects, who are they and how will they be followed and tracked? What are the major measures and justify the measures? So what's your predictor? What's your outcome? How are you going to measure that? And then how are you going to analyze the data? So just subjects, measures, analysis are sort of the three basic elements to consider. And then help the reviewers answer the big questions. Is the research question important? Is this the right study for you? Is this study going to get you where you need to be? And is it practical? Will it succeed? So mentors, kind of key message is this is the ideal mentor is the one who is going to make things happen for you. And you kind of want reviewers to sort of say well, this person can't help but succeed because this mentor just is so terrific. And everyone who this mentor is so committed to them, this mentor seems passionate about their success, and this mentor has a track record. So their background and accomplishments are really important. You know, it's good. You want mentors, like especially the primary mentor who has a track record of mentorship and helping people succeed. But then it's so important that they become personally committed to you. You know, it might seem silly, but, you know, you want it to be apparent in a mentor letter that your mentor actually likes you. And they may well, but they might not say it. They might think it's too obvious. You know, that sometimes like there will be a perception that this mentor is so busy, they don't have time for more mentees. But it's really impressive when a mentor writes something like, well, yeah, I am busy, but this person is so important to me. I'm going to find this time. I'm going to give up other stuff because I want to do what it takes to mentor this person. So the primary mentor characteristics are an accomplished leader in the field. They have a good publication record. They have some track record of independent funding, either an R01 or some other major funding that supports their own research program. Generally, you know, this is something I get asked a lot, and pragmatically, it's better to have a mentor at your own institution. We can talk about that if you have questions on that. There's more flexibility than there used to be. It used to be almost impossible. There are ways to make the case now for an extra institutional mentor. Ironically, I think the COVID era, I think there might be more sympathy for extra institutional mentors now because of just what we've been through and the realization of so much that we can do without actually being in the same room. I personally totally disagree with the concept that you have to be an associate professor or later to be a good mentor. Unfortunately, I think the reality on a lot of K applications is I think there's still a perception on review panels is that till your mentor has reached that milestone, they're still going to be focused primarily on their career and not your career. So it's not to say you can never have somebody at a lower level than that, but it's going to take some work and justification. It generally just works better if like your mentor's past that level. So the evaluation of your mentor will be on their bio-sketch. They'll look at their area of expertise. Is it a good match with you? What's their funding, and have their prior mentees been successful? And their letter, sometimes you should actually be reviewing drafts of the mentor's letter that goes in the application because they might not actually know what's needed there. So you should probably, they'll be red penning your research plan, but you should be red penning their mentoring letter. They like you and are thrilled at the opportunity to mentor you. They are completely and totally committed to mentoring you. And they need to sort of show some detail that how are they going to supervise you? How often are they going to meet with you? What are their plans for your career development? Make sure it's consistent with what you said in your application. There's some reviewers that just seem to like finding an inconsistency between what the mentor said in their letter and what you said your mentor was going to do in your application. I don't think they should do that, but they do. So just pre-answer that. How will they help you accomplish your research, and how will they help you get to independence? So the mentoring team are generally additional mentors that round out the skills and expertise you need. They fulfill either a career development need that you have or a research need. And letters generally should be clear about how mentors will interact. It's good to see that the mentors are acting within a team. Often sort of simple things like, you know, the mentors are going to meet together with you X times a year, you know, just once or twice. Include what you need, but don't go overboard. If you have 10 mentors, you have 0 mentors is the way it's often looked at. So, you know, usually no more than about, you know, maybe 3 mentors, like as sort of the key mentors, and then maybe a few additional advisors. The environment section, it's one of the scored criteria. It's somewhat less important than the other components. It's kind of already reflected in what you're able to put together in the application. But what they are looking for is some statement that the institution is committed to you. So it does matter that like your chair's letter says they're really committed to you. This is, again, I think it's a little bit unfortunate that reviewers look at this, but there are some reviewers that just really frown on statements that the faculty appointment is dependent on your K funding. They want to hear that you're going to get the appointment irrespective of your K funding. So there are tricks to try. If you're facing a situation where that just happens not to be true, there's sort of tricks about how you can negotiate with these letter writers to sort of make things look good. So the chair letter needs to include the requirement, like there will be required elements that are listed in the program announcement that say, yes, you will have the 75% protected time. And again, the letter should say that they're committed to you. Often you draft your chair's letter, so you often get to add that in. So just to close, like, remember the big picture. Will this candidate make a significant and important contribution to aging research? And will this proposal lead to that outcome? And work so that your statement of yourself, the statement of your career plan, your research plan, mentors, and environment all commit to that sense that you're going to be a big pusher in the field. And finally, give yourself some credit. Times are hard. You might hear older people talk about things in the days of the giants, but they're kind of lying. It was actually easier then than it is now. You can get this done. Many people not as good as you have gotten these awards. Just keep trying. There's many opportunities, NIH and foundations. I think final point, yes, maybe, you need the funding and this is really important to you, but just keep your perspective. Don't wrap too much self-esteem in this. Remember that reviewers judge your grant. They don't judge your worth. They don't judge the power of your ideas. So just remember, yes, they will judge whether or not you get the grant, but they don't judge you as a person. And, I sometimes meet with people. All of us have got negative reviews and it's a blow to self-esteem. Just don't let reviewers have that power over you. They get to decide your grant, but they don't get to decide like if you're a good person. They don't get to decide if you're smart. So just don't give them that power. And I will stop there.
Amazing. Thank you. So our group is suddenly getting a lot
Thank you
bigger
very much.
because everybody is coming back from our multi-PI groups, but I would like to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes and give everybody the opportunity to ask Ken questions. Your words of wisdom, Ken, are so much, they move so far beyond career awards and really are you're just a treasure trove of knowledge about grant writing. So every time I listen, I learn something new. And I just wanted to make sure that we have an opportunity for people to ask you questions.
Happy to.
I have a question. So sometimes there's some stigma about qualitative projects and that they are less scientific. And I was just wondering if you have any suggestions in these type of awards, if there are some key points to hit to ensure that those projects are taken seriously?
Very good question. I think, fortunately, it is much less true than it was like 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. I think there is much more respect for qualitative research on NIH study sections. So I think there's been fortunate ground, in part because NIA has funded good work and people see the meaning and output of that work. This is sort of, I think, my take as a quantitative researcher and a big data set researcher. The way I often help people justify their qualitative research is I look at what they're going to do and I say, I could not possibly answer that with my method. And I kind of sort of them that you have to make that clear. So I think often the way to justify a good qualitative project, especially if you're going to be reviewed by people who aren't experts, is to really explain why you need a qualitative methodology. And, you know, the point of that, you're getting at something very fundamental about the way, you know, subjects think and process, or about the, you know, maybe tons of research. So for example, in disparities research, maybe tons of research has documented that there's disparities, but we haven't understood sort of the deep impact. So that, you know, I mean, it's sort of interesting, like NIA is to sort of put out some RFAs for understanding structural racism. I mean, it's a question, some of it could be addressed with large data sets. So much of it cannot possibly be addressed with any methods other than qualitative research. So that, I think, directly answer why you need a qualitative methodology, and that there's something really fundamental about our understanding that you have to address. The other part is, the people on study sections who often not qualitative research are often qualitative researchers. And this is true of everything. We all beat our own people. Sometimes if you write a qualitative project without rigorous methodology, like a qualitative researcher will look at this and say, so you think my work as a qualitative scientist is chatting with people and having conversations? And not that they're like, there's a rigorous methodology about, first, like, are you going to chat or are you going to do participant observation? Why are you doing a focus group instead of individual interviews? What is your method of analysis? What is the underlying theory of your analysis? So just show the rigor of the method. And, you know, the best approach to showing how scientific it is showing how scientific it is.
Thank you so much. That's extremely helpful.
Other questions? Wonderful. Melissa Gerald put some information in the chat around NIA's Research Career Development Awards, different opportunities, different ways to, you know, time to spend on the website. I think we'll probably have one of our bi-monthly groups, our bi-monthly seminar series. We'll invite Melissa and or one of her colleagues to come and walk people who are not very familiar with the NIH website through the NIH website, so that you can explore opportunities for yourself. It can be a very small group if a lot of people are knowledgeable, but I think there's some early NIH investigators here on this call that would really benefit from just some facility around the website. So Melissa, if we can call on you for that, or one of your colleagues, we would be really delighted.
I'm absolutely delighted to read any of them.
And also, I see a few questions in the chat box. If I haven't answered your question subsequently, feel free to email me and I'm happy to sort of chat. I see Bree has given some really fantastic answers to questions in the chat box. So including like the things of like, you know, if you say you're going to meet with your mentor twice a week via Zoom, then your mentor letter says, I'm going to meet with my mentee twice a week via Zoom. So it is like things like little things like that that like are, you know, they seem little, but they're kind of like important. So
redundancy is really important.
So,
You're not getting points for using different words and synonyms for words. They actually want to see that you're using all the same words, no synonyms, just the same words. Awesome.
May I add two
Okay.
little minor
Yes,
points?
please.
I must say that Ken's presentation I thought was fantastic. And that's one of the first times I can actually say that about an extramural researcher talking about NIH, because usually we all have different ideas of how we operate, but rarely is it so spot on as to everything I heard. So I am impressed, and that is that great advice I heard. I wanted to just mention a few minor points that I didn't hear. One of the things that I have found most compelling in letters of support are not only that like mirroring of saying exactly the same thing and what will be delivered through that mentor, but also think applying Ken's theme of you as the product. What are those gaps that you are trying to fill in yourself, and having those match to specific, you know, areas of expertise of your mentors and activities that you'll be doing to fill those gaps, whatever they are, and to have them well justified. But the most compelling letters of support that I have read have included details about what the mentor is going to get out of that candidate. And so where you've seen the candidate being described, basically, it sounds like they're a collaborator of the mentor. Given that these are independent career development awards, that really kind of resonates. I don't even think it was intentional when I was reading it, but it kept reading when I was reading these. It was super compelling that this candidate had things that the mentorship team did not have and they wanted, and they just couldn't get ready. You know, they just wanted to hurry up with this project so this person could become their collaborator, their full-blown collaborator. And they were using language of collaboration and words like collaborator that really instilled that. That's really, I think, key. And so, yeah, I think, but everything else I think was already been said. I could add little minor things, but you can reach out to me anytime with your plans, and I'd happy to share the task with Ken when he's not bombarded with emails from all of you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. And I just want to say, again, so we were going to do breakout rooms, but I think it would be nice just to have 5 or 10 minutes all together as a group, just to, if you have additional ideas or things that came up today. But I would just like to say again, that Melissa is like the most involved program officer anyone could ever hope for. It's incredible. I mean, she has made herself available to Nick and I whenever we have questions that you all ask us. She is thinking about us and our group when opportunities come out that we're passing along to you. And she really means it when she says, like, write to her. She's one of those program officers who will write back. And I think you should say you're part of the Arch Network when you write to her, because she really has, from the beginning of the call for these networks, really thought of this project and program and really helped us to move it through the system. So hats off to Melissa. I mean, I've never had a program officer go to every single event. That it's just amazing. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank
we
you,
really
Bree.
appreciate
That's
you.
kind.